All right, we are live, and I'm very excited to introduce you all to today's guest, a returning guest, his third appearance on this podcast. On today's episode, alongside co-host Bianca Leger, we interview a legendary fitness trainer, physical educator, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu pioneer, the first American-born Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Helson Gracie, and multiple-time Joe Rogan guest. He's a 6th-degree black belt, and he'll be back teaching around the world, with his next week-long seminar being his Jiu-Jitsu For A Lifetime training camp in Ikaria, Greece, this upcoming July 23rd. Welcome back to the winner's circle, Steve Maxwell.
Very much. I appreciate you guys having me on your fine podcast.
Welcome.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to hear what's new, what's latest with you, Steve. And the first question will offer us opportunity to get a glimpse, and that is, Steve Maxwell, what do you love about your world at this moment, right here, right now?
I'm living in nature right now. I live on the tip of the Olympic Peninsula in the eastern part, in a little area called Jefferson County, near a town called Port Townsend. So I'm surrounded by beauty and nature. There's a herd of deer out my yard right now, and I train these little Douglas squirrels to come up to my house, and they eat out of my hand. Squirrels are very smart. If there was any such thing as a North American monkey, the squirrels come closest to it. That's how intelligent they are. And this particular squirrel is called the Douglas squirrel, and they are just the sassiest little guys. Very fun, very vocal, and I've befriended like 3 of them, and they actually come in my house, eat out of my hand. Took me a while to win their trust, but yesterday I had mallards with a whole bunch of little baby ducklings. I have 2 raccoons I call Baby Girl and Little Boy, who come up and take food out of my hand. Kind of like St. Francis of Assisi. I got this communication going with these little guys. This all started with the pandemic. I had been a digital nomad for a better part of almost 14 years, really, traveling from place to place, no home base, basically no safety net. I was living out of one bag, so I was a minimalist, and I got word that there was going to be some kind of big kerfuffle from my astrologer. I've been roundly made fun of about this astrology thing. Joe Rogan really put me through the ringer on that one, man. He was a skeptic, but this guy's all pretty good info. So I knew it was time to pull off the road. He said, look, you don't want to be traveling during this thing. It's going to be a lot of restrictions. I don't know exactly what's happening, but it's going to be a big deal. So I bought a tiny house. I actually have a house now. It's a little tiny house. It's not very big. A little sleeping loft is about 8 by 22. Kind of looks like a big gypsy wagon. It's on wheels. So classic RV. So anyway, I actually have a home for the first time in about 14 years.
Yes, so you got off the road. Yeah, you got off the road late February, I think early March. And so it's been about 2.5 years that you've been living in Port Townsend, Washington, after being a digital nomad for, like you said, almost 14 years. So I'm super curious, Steve, what have you learned about yourself in these last 2.5 years, settling down in Port Townsend, Washington, living in that tiny home, after being on the road, traveling the world for 14 years? What did you learn about yourself? And also, what did you learn about the world?
I like a home. I actually do. Towards the end of that journey, I started getting a little bit burnt out. I was getting tired, it was tiresome. And I really yearn for some place like a home base, It doesn't mean I still don't get the travel bug, but I definitely needed a home base, and I just needed to settle down. Flying is very hard on the body. You're just in like one big electromagnetic field, and I don't know whether you've read about the negative effects of EMF, but it's it can be pronounced in the body,
Oh yeah,
not to
for
mention
sure.
other forms of pollution. So, yeah, I learned that I really do enjoy a home, even a humble little house.
Yeah.
And what did you learn about the world these last 2.5 years, Steve?
People are more alike than they're different. People just want a good life, and it really the problems of the world are almost always caused by our so-called leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too political on your show.
Yeah.
I'll stick. I know I'm a fitness guy, but if it was up to the people, we would all probably get along pretty well. But for the
Yeah.
most, man, some of the things I've seen, erosion of people's personal rights, it's amazing to me
Mm-hmm.
what's been going on.
So
So,
what can we do? What can we do as individuals, Steve, to get along better with one another?
well, the
What
only
can we
thing
do?
you can really do, in my opinion, now this is my opinion, so to really make the world a better place is to be the
Yes.
best person you can be. Because then if you're radiating goodness and radiating love, you affect everyone around you and it has a ripple effect, like throwing
Absolutely.
a rock in a pond and, so, activism and protests and, certainly these destructive protests of trying to tear things down and burn things up, that never has a good consequence. It only causes resentment and anger and, negativity never makes positivity. Doing something negative will not bring ever a positive result. So I think by developing yourself spiritually and physically, you have the greatest impact because everyone you meet, you'll be like an ambassador for goodness.
So many people follow you, and they're very familiar with how you take care of yourself physically and how you develop with yourself physically. What I'm most curious about is to hear more about how you develop yourself spiritually, and where did that journey get started, and what does
Well,
that
you
look
have
like
to,
today?
you absolutely need to meditate every day in some form. It doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to sit in a cross-legged yogi position and do it,
Yeah.
But you definitely need some time away from your constant barrage of thoughts going through your mind. Thoughts are not necessarily of your own. Thoughts pass into your mind through the collective being like the world at large, and these thoughts are passing around. And the thoughts that you project, are going into other people's minds too. And you need to shut off that noisy mind. And I do it through breathing, through breath work. I have one exercise that I really like a lot. It's called the pulling down exercise. Very ancient. I can do this when driving, when walking, even when I'm doing like a meditative jog, like light, slow run. And basically, you imagine a hole in the top of your head and a hole in the bottom of your feet. And as you inhale through your lower lungs into the upper lungs, when you exhale, you actively pull energy down through your entire body and out the bottom of your feet. It's really good to practice in the beginning lying down in bed. You can imagine, like, I don't know if you've ever done this, but as a kid, I can remember laying in a fast-moving stream with my feet laying on my back and the water rushing down over my body. You kind of visualize that. Another one is like I've stood under waterfall where the water pours on my head and down my body. So if you can kind of get that feeling, you can kind of do this pulling down exercise, and you basically energize every cell in your body. And you can you don't need to make fancy affirmations or anything because that kind of takes away from it. But sometimes I'll just say love or more God, whatever God is to you, I don't see God like you know, a Santa Claus up in heaven, you know.
Yeah, that was
Whatever higher power leading, more
that
love,
was a
or just a simple statement. And you inhale in 4, pause for 2, pull down with 6 or 7.
Mm.
And if I'm
out through the
walking,
feet.
I make sure it's an uneven number so that I'm not always inhaling on my left foot. I alternate.
Okay.
The inhale is on left foot, then the next inhale is the right foot. So you don't become one-sided with your breath work.
Powerful.
Very
Maybe.
powerful. And I'll keep that up for a while. And man, I can't tell you how relaxed and recharged you feel afterwards. So this is this is active meditation.
Yeah, no, that sounds powerful. Last conversation we had, you guided us through a cone of light visualization at the end. So if we have time, maybe you could guide us through a pulling down at the end of this conversation.
Sure.
Okay, so you're now getting back on the road, and you have a week-long Jiu-Jitsu for a Lifetime camp coming up in one of your favorite places in the world, Ikaria, Greece. What can students expect to learn here, and what do you love so much about that island?
It's relatively undeveloped compared to a lot of the Aegean islands. It gets a share of tourists, but discerning tourists, because there's no big fancy 5-star hotels at all. The big hotel chains aren't able to build there because it's so rocky and hilly, and you know, and it's still a very simple way of life for these people. They live like they did, for thousands of years, really. You know, they had their own home gardens. A lot of them keep herds of goats. You know, they're somewhat self-sufficient, and they're one of the blue zones. Do you know anything about the blue zones?
No, not much.
A blue zone is an area where a large portion of the population live to be over 100 years old.
Okay.
And they'll have Kimbamba, Ecuador, Ikaria, Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia. There's a place in, I think, Kazakhstan, a place in Georgia. There's these little Loma Linda, California. They're known for centenarians. And these older people are, pretty healthy. They're not like in wheelchairs and, walkers and old folks homes. They're active. They're active people. And a lot of people come because of that, because they're interested in studying. Like, why do these people live so long? Of course, they always try to package it, Oh, it's the special honey that they grow there, or it's the herbs of the tea. No, it's none of those things. It's like a total package. But yeah, I like it because it's just a real chill place. I mean, really calming, relaxing. I went there every year for 8 years before the pandemic. So then I was too. So it'll be like kind of returning home. I usually stay there for a month or so. And you asked what people will learn at the training camp?
Yeah, what can they expect to learn?
Real big. I'm very big on the basics of BJJ. I don't even like to use the word BJJ because BJJ is a sport. I teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and the difference between Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the emphasis on self-defense and the teaching style, the way it's taught. There's a educational system to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
Probably the most famous practitioner would be Rickson Gracie. He's revered as probably the greatest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner ever, and for good reason. I mean, the guy was a phenom, and all his brothers are phenomenal, and they're all great teachers. And I studied with Grandmaster Elliot Gracie when he was alive, had a lot of dealings with him, and his oldest son, Julian, and of course, Royce Gracie and I were pretty close at one point, and his brother Helson. So I've had a chance to train with all these guys.
Hmm.
And in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, you always go back to the basic. And the one thing that I do that's a little bit different is I teach people movement patterns, because if you can't move, you can't do Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people, a lot of teachers, they try to teach sophisticated movement, like techniques, but it's built on a poor movement base. So you can't, it's really hard to teach somebody how to do, a particular throw or technique if they're afraid of falling.
Yeah.
It's really hard to teach someone how to do a arm lock from the mounted position or from the guard if they're stiff and they don't have basic movement patterns. How do you teach someone how to escape from various positions if they can't move? So I spend some
Yeah.
time, and I've identified, like 6 essential movement patterns to be
What
able
are
to do
they?
BJJ. Well, it's kind of hard to describe, but it would be like a bridge and roll, sit out and turn in.
Okay.
It would be a leg thread, which is hard to describe here. A
Hmm.
leg scissors, a thing I call the swoop, and standing up in base.
Okay.
And forward roll, backward roll, over the shoulder, not a gymnastic roll.
Yes.
I'm big on teaching falling. If you
Yeah.
have a fear of falling, it's hard to do a combat sport. Now, BJJ is famous for, in the sport, people just grabbing and sitting down. Some
Yeah.
people use a disparaging word, calling it butt scooting.
Yes.
And what's happened is modern sport BJJ is pretty much useless for any kind of realistic street self-defense. But Gracie Jiu-Jitsu still retains the original stand-up self-defense, how to block punches, kicks, how to defend against a stick over your head, how to defend against a gun in your face, basic knife defenses. What happens if you're in a bar and someone grabs you in a bear hug or grabs you in a choke from behind? Well, there's escape from all that. Some guy comes up and tries to kick you. Well, there's ways that you can easily throw him to the ground if you know what you're doing. So these are essential movement patterns that we retain in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Hmm. So
That's what people can expect to learn.
yeah, no, that's exciting. They're going to be very lucky to have your wisdom shared with them once again in in-person seminar. So talking about self-defense, myself, and I'm excited to tell you this information, Steve, since we last chatted over a year ago on your episode 60, I've since gotten my Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and I've recently just started teaching a new MMA Jiu-Jitsu program at the city's top kickboxing gym. They're now incorporating Jiu-Jitsu, grappling, wrestling. So they brought my coach in to run the adult program, and I'm running the youth and the children's program. So I'm very excited about that. It's a huge celebration for me.
That's wonderful, man. Are you teaching Jiu-Jitsu self-defense, or are you teaching boxing or kickboxing?
Jiu-Jitsu self-defense. That's Jiu-Jitsu, grappling, self-defense. It's all to really help the students be bully-proof, and then first and foremost get those fundamental movements, like you said, how to move, how to protect oneself, how to develop a great defense. Because once the students are comfortable with defensive, being able to stay safe, get up, run away whenever they wish, then they can mount an offense, and I can teach them the offense. But I think an important part for all beginners is just learning how to stay safe, no matter where they are, and be able to get up and leave whenever they wish.
Are you using the Gracie bully proof program as your template, or?
I'm incorporating that into just my various teachers, but yeah, it's definitely a huge influence on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good, because no sense reinventing the wheel because they already have.
Exactly.
You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The problem with modern MMA for self-defense is, what if you get a bigger, stronger guy? It's hard to duke it out with somebody. I mean, even if your punches are pretty good and your kicks are pretty strong, if the guy's really big, you're going to get pounded,
Yeah.
or you're going to go to jail. You're going to go to prison or you're going to be sued. A lot of people
Yeah.
forget you can't do MMA in the street. Real fights aren't like, hey man, like a match. MMA is
Yeah.
relatively useless for self-defense as well.
Hmm.
One of the main reasons because they wear those gloves.
Yeah.
No one fights with gloves in the street. You take those gloves off, man, you're gonna bust your hand. Unless you're really used to bare knuckle boxing. So the idea that I can do kickboxing MMA and have a good stand-up self-defense is not necessarily true. Not
Yeah.
really.
I agree.
And then also, surprise attacks. Not every attack comes in the form of someone challenging you to a fight. A lot
Yeah.
of times, you'll suddenly be grabbed from behind or from the side. You'll find yourself in a clinch or in a chokehold or a bear hug or someone tackling you. And that's where Gracie Jiu-Jitsu shines
Oh,
because
absolutely.
there's
And
all those problems.
yeah, and with my curriculum that I'm putting together, like it's finished a month now, so it's a brand new program. It's very exciting because I get to create this. I wish I'm using a lot of your influence, the things I've learned from you through just listening to your podcast, through your amazing videos on your website at stevemaxwellsc.com, which I've bought pretty much all of them. So we're doing basic self-defense things like takedowns. So teaching them the basic judo throws, teaching them the basic wrestling takedowns, those fundamental movements that you said. And yeah, we're not using gloves for at least for the first year. At least the fundamentals are key. Do you have any other advice for me regarding starting up this program? What are the most important foundations I should instill with these beginner students, 7 to 14?
Well, they don't have much. The 7-year-olds through 10 have very limited concentration. And
Mm-hmm.
it's even with modern kids, they half of them suffer from attention deficit disorder.
Yes, ADHD.
They can't concentrate. It's all the sugar and the poor modern diet, the refined
Mm-hmm.
sugar, the flours, and the fast food industry has really destroyed a lot of children's health. And a lot of folks just don't know better. So you have your hands full. So what I found with kids classes in particular, have a good
Mm-hmm.
game. The game
Okay.
is what they're for. Because a lot of them are there kind of like they don't even care about jujitsu that much. They're there because the parents want them there, you know?
Yeah.
And so if you have a really fun game for them to play and they live for those games,
Yeah.
if you teach them one stand-up technique and one ground technique in a class, you've done quite well. And you
Okay.
shouldn't do more than 5 minutes of any one thing or you'll lose them.
Okay. That's great advice.
But a
What were
lot of
some?
competitive type games,
Yeah.
not
Like.
just soccer or something. I mean, do something that, like sumo wrestling, pushing someone out of a circle. You know that game?
Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's a great,
That's a great.
if any
That's a great.
part of the body touches the floor, other than their feet or their hand,
Yeah.
they're out. Or if
Yeah.
they push them or pull them out of the circle, kids love that one, man. Indian wrestling, where you hold the hand and your foot is together and you try to make the guy take a step. It's
Okay.
pretty, standing in front of each other with your hands on, like I'm directly in front of you and our hands are together. And we start to move to try to make the guy take a step. Great for
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
I do this with adults. Adults love these games, man.
Oh yeah.
Because it develops a sense of kinesthetic awareness, softness. As you know, jujitsu is supposed to be soft. And, it's all about moving yourself, not the person.
Yes.
Anyone that's trying to move their opponent and force their will on the opponent is going the wrong direction. Judo in jujitsu means soft, gentle. You give with force. And these games, if you get too tense or try to get too muscly, you'll lose. So,
Mm-hmm.
teaching from an early age, these developmental type games, combative games, is really fun. And another fun one is fox and geese. You have all the kids
Okay.
that the mat, one fox in the middle, and when they run from one end of the mat to the other, and
Yeah.
you have to circle and hold on, teaches clinching, and then whoever gets caught becomes a fox, and now two foxes, and then they run down and they'll catch someone, there'll be three, and you keep going
Yeah.
until there's one kid left. But what they don't realize is they're doing interval training, high intensity
Oh,
interval.
yeah.
They're doing sprints.
Yeah, those are
And of
also
course,
really great
kids
ideas.
love animal crawls,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So
the real little ones, the bigger kids, they get too proud, they think they're, but yeah, bear crawls, dragon crawls, shrimping, shrimping backwards, feet first, crab crawl, backward crab crawl, frog hops, commando crawls, crawling with your hands behind your back. Try that one sometime. Try crawling backwards, feet first on your stomach with your hands behind your back. Not as easy as you would think. Quite a workout too. Getting up and down off the floor, not using your hands.
Yeah. Yeah, basic fundamentals.
But not falling either, You have to do that.
Yeah.
Self-control. Adults many times cannot do it.
So no, this is all exciting. I'm excited to try all this in class. And a follow-up question with this is, and something you've been very successful with yourself, is taking a child to professional capacity. And you've done that with your son, Zach, and you've also done that with your daughter, Savannah, in terms of she's a very successful CrossFitter now. So how do we take a child and mold them into a competent athlete, and one day a professional?
Don't push them. Let them be kids. Don't get into, we call it the little league syndrome here in the States, where parents live vicariously through their child's success. Maybe they were a frustrated athlete and they pushed their kids. You see it, the little league syndrome. People screaming at the umpire, during little league games, or, football dads that are giving the coach a hard time. I mean, it's really crazy, but it's pretty pernicious. I'm sure, soccer dads and soccer moms, giving referees a hard time. And I saw that a lot of Naga tournaments, where parents were just awful to their kids, for losing. I mean, you should never push a kid. You want the kid to enjoy it, have fun with it. I think that's very, very important, to let the kid be a kid and play. A lot of play time. Kids should be playing,
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't really get too serious about jiu-jitsu. Oh, and don't have the kids compete too early. Too much pressure. I don't like these little kid tournaments. I think, when a kid gets to be a teenager and he wants to compete, let him compete.
Yeah.
The mistake, that's great. Pushing my son a little bit too early.
Another common coaching error, something we briefly talked about last time we talked, but I'd like to bring up again, and this applies to teaching adults and children and youth. So I think it's just a great reminder for everyone listening. And that common coaching error that you brought up was the coaches only addressing the best students in the room. How can we avoid that? And how can we be a better teacher, whether they be adults or students, and teach everyone, whether they are star athletes?
I do understand the temptation to work with the real eager, elite level kids, because they are good at it, and because they have a knack for it. It's real easy to spend your time with those kids, but it's very important to give time to the worst kid in the room, even a little extra time. Now, when you're by yourself teaching, it's not easy to divide time equally, but fight the temptation to work with only the best kids.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard one.
Yeah, it is, because you want to see the fruits of your labor. You want the kids to get the move. You want them to be good. So make sure that even the worst kid is getting your individual attention, and that takes a lot of discipline on the teacher's part. And I I would recommend highly that you get someone to assist you.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do. On most classes, I have different teammates step in and they can
Yeah,
practice
no,
their
you need,
mentor skill.
and everyone needs to get equal attention, especially the people that really need the attention, the kids that are really struggling with it. But, shockingly, sometimes they end up being the best ones. And
And just take
so,
some time.
and don't push kids to compete too early. You'll have some kids eager for it, but kids that aren't, don't push them. It's not a good idea. You'll just burn them out or make them hate it. And
Yeah.
you got to keep it fun. You got to keep it really fun. Not too much time drilling, not for real little kids. Older kids, yeah. By the time they're a teenager, you can start almost teaching like an adult.
Yeah.
But, with the little kids, you got to let them and make it a playtime. Make it fun, man. Half the time, there should be some kind of fun little competitive game that they really enjoy.
Yeah, this excellent reminders. I thank you so much for this, Steve. Let's get back into training jiu-jitsu for a lifetime. I believe you're 68 now, or how old are you?
9. I'll be 70 this year. December. 70.
69.
Just a
And
few
you're
months away from my 70th birthday.
wow, that's so amazing. And you're still training strong, training with the young bucks, but you're doing it safe. And one way you attend to your training jiu-jitsu for your lifetime is you attend to your daily mobility, you attend to your strength training, and you attend to your flexibility. Those are some fundamentals that keep you spry and useful at your young age of 69. So let's talk about that. What
And
does
it
your
gets harder over the years too. You do see like little drops, but it's more subtle. It's
So
more subtle.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about your daily mobility, your strength training and flexibility. What do those routines look like for you today?
It's changed a little bit over the years. I started incorporating more energetic work. So I do Qigong patterns, these more energetic movement patterns. Yeah, I don't know whether you know, but I got very interested in Russian Sistema,
Yeah.
the system, and I practice a lot of Sistema type movements that I learned, mobility movements. And Sistema kind of has it's a love-hate that people have, whether a lot of people think it's just a lot of nonsense, and there's other people that swear by it. I personally think it's really good. It's fantastic. It's a soft form of martial arts, and the movement patterns that they teach in Sistema are fantastic. And I'll tell you, well, with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, not imposing your will, but my mobility changes, over the decades.
Yeah.
But every single morning, I'll do some type of mobility, and it differs from stretching in that it's all movement, and I'm not holding stretches. Although I do take stretches, I do, but
static stretch.
always at the end of a workout, and it's not like hours. Just basic flexibility. I mean, how flexible do you need to be? You don't need to be proportionist. You don't need to do splits. You don't need to do back bends and all that kind of stuff. It's unnecessary.
Sometimes that could even be detrimental. I remember you talking about in the past how over flexible people can usually be like often the most injured people.
And a lot of times people injure themselves doing the flexibility training without even realizing it. It's like a slow erosion of joint health over time.
Yeah.
One day they'll be doing something and bang, they'll just get this injury, not realizing that they had been building this injury for a really long time. The same thing happens with the way people lift weights. A lot of people lift in a dangerous, sloppy manner, emphasizing the amount of weight over form and technique. And they just basically erode joint health to the point where, one day they'll be doing something on the mat, or maybe playing soccer or football, and a knee will go out, or an ankle or a foot or their back. And they don't realize that this injury had been building for months in the weight room or with poor stretching technique, and they were just slowly eroding their joint health over time with these poor exercise techniques.
Mm-hmm.
The only people that should be considered, really worried or concerned about the amount of weight that they're lifting are weightlifters. If you're a competitive weightlifter, obviously that's your game. But for anyone else, you can get a fantastic workout without overemphasizing huge, heavy weight or single reps or triple reps or whatever.
Yeah, and making light weights feel heavy with slower movement or even static isometrics.
Yeah, isometric, slow movement training. It doesn't have to necessarily be super slow, which is an actual super slow is a system where you do 10-second positive, 10-second negative. It works great. But you don't have to go that slow. Some people don't like it, but it does work. But, the main thing is that you're not explosively throwing weight around. And this idea that you need explosive movement to be explosive, that's not true. Not at all. You just damage your joints. Explosivity in movement, let's say a takedown or a throw, is very specific movement pattern. Moving weights fast and explosive will not make other movements faster. It will not. Strength will. To be explosive in a judo throw or a wrestling takedown, you got to practice the specific takedown, the specific throw, in the specific way that you would do it in competition. So you got to be careful sometimes using rubber bands for throws or even dummies. It's not the same thing as throwing a human being.
No.
You'd be better off actually having a real live human and have a crash pad so they don't have to take too many break balls and throw them on a crash pad over and over and over to get your throws down or your takedowns. And you can do them even slow-mo to get the movement pattern and then gradually speed up. But it's all about movement patterns and getting your nervous system really, really efficient. But you do not need explosive resistance training. You don't. And it just erodes joint health over time.
So is that the same with cardio training? The best cardio for jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, not...
Absolutely. Hey, look, I've had, during my career when I was really competing a lot, I had a number of injuries. The more intense you start to train, the greater the possibility of getting hurt. And during that time, I would do tons of cardio work. And when I go back to the mat, I'd still be winded.
Oh, yeah.
And I realized there's a small transfer, but it's pretty minimal. So don't beat yourself up with a lot of cardio if your goal is to do jiu-jitsu. It's unnecessary. And it really doesn't transfer that much. It really, truly doesn't. The closest thing I found to transfer was various crawling patterns. Crawls, bear crawls, that type of stuff. And they don't even have to be all that fast. But you're like whole body movement, getting up and down off the floor. That will keep you as in good a shape for jiu-jitsu when you can't do jiu-jitsu. Nothing beats actually going and grappling, nothing.
Yeah.
And obviously you got a strength train.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have two questions, and so I'll do the first one about cardio first. And that's, what about swimming, Steve? That's something that I've been getting into the last couple of years during this pandemic, and I'm using it as a recreation and just kind of an active recovery. And I feel it's complemented my jiu-jitsu and grappling because my body goes kind of into fight or flight mode. When you put your head into water, the body's not used to putting the head in water. So I'm using swimming just as an active recovery and to calm my nervous system. But I heard you on a recent podcast and you said you were not a fan of swimming because of repetitive injuries. So I'm just curious. I've not heard you talk about swimming before other than that quick snippet on a past conversation. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on swimming as a recreation and as an activity.
Getting good at swimming requires technique.
Yeah.
And the more technical and skilled you get at swimming, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
So then you become incredibly efficient in the water.
Yeah.
None of the things transfer to jujitsu. A skill in one activity does not transfer to another activity. It's very specific. It's called specificity of training. Now, that's not to say that nothing transfers. It does. There is some cardiovascular benefits to swimming. It certainly feels good. And as long as you don't get carried away, like swimming like a competitive swimmer,
Yeah.
you will get some crossover benefit, but it's pretty minimal. It's pretty minimal. And, do the swimming because you enjoy the swimming.
Yeah, I do.
Do it because it feels good and you like it. But don't do it with the idea that you're going to improve jujitsu. Do it as an activity unto itself. If you really want to get good at jujitsu or martial arts, you got to practice those. And there's no other substitute. Now, there are ways that you can condition yourself that are somewhat close. For example, just doing crawling patterns on the mat, every kind of movement you can think of, just learning to move it. That's good stuff, man. There's a pretty close transfer to a lot of that. And of course, strength training transfers into everything. But when I'm talking about strength training, I'm not talking about lifting. I'm not talking about swinging heavy kettlebells. I'm not talking about, powerlifting or explosive lifting. I'm talking about general strength training.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what does your general strength training look like for you today, Steve? Your personal.
Push, pull, horizontal and vertical, push, pull. Like overhead press, some kind of chin up or pull up, some type of push up or dip, and some type of row that covers your whole upper body. If I have a specific area that I need to work on, maybe I have like a little tweak in my shoulder, I might do some supplementary shoulder work for the area that's bugging me. I always work my hips, usually some form of deadlift or 45-degree back extension, and always some kind of squat, type of squat. I'm pretty limited because I use primarily body weight. And then I do ancillary movement patterns. I do my feet and calves. It's very important. And equally important to calves are your shins. A lot of people neglect the front of their shin. You use them all the time in jiu-jitsu, with the hooks. You use your feet a lot. So my feet, calves, and ankles get quite a workout, including shin. Neck, you gotta work your neck. If you don't have a really good neck machine, isometrics work great for neck. But make sure that you stretch your neck too. Isometrics can tie if you're not careful. And then you need to work your abdominals, but you don't need excessive ab work. Planking, crunches. I like the ab mat. It's like a little curve pattern in your back where you slow curl up and down. And you don't need to do multiple sets. I use somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds of really hard work to momentary failure. And if you're doing a lot of BJJ, you don't even need to train more than once a week with the strength training. So many guys try to lift like bodybuilders or power lifters, and boy, do they get burned out. And you'll find these guys are hurt a lot.
So for a non-martial artist like Bianca, what are the basic self-defense things she needs to know? Like what does just a general civilian, a non-martial artist, what do they need to be aware of, and how can they learn this? And for someone not wanting to invest in training martial arts regularly, this becoming their recreation, this their hobby, their primary physical activity, what can just a general person do to stay safe, bully-proof on the street?
Being 100% aware of your surroundings at all times. Awareness. You need to know what's in front of you, what's behind you, what's beside you. Without this awareness, you have no chance at number 2, which is avoidance. You cross the street. You go in the opposite direction if someone's following you. So when you have good awareness and avoidance, then you will probably get rid of 99% of most problems before they start. What you don't want to get into the conflict. And then the third A, the awareness, avoidance, and then action. And the action could be as simple as running as fast as you can. For that reason, don't wear high heels in the street. Wear flats. If you have to wear high heels at work, put them on at work. But don't walk around the street with non-functional shoes. And just get really good at having eyes in the back of your head. And if you start to feel like something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. So trust your intuition. Do not walk around texting or on your phone. Do not use your phone in the streets or in parking garages. And if you do put your car in a parking garage, best to be escorted to your car. And you really, by the time you're in a conflict where someone's attacking you, you already messed up. You've already made a whole bunch of mistakes. You missed all the signposts. Unless there's someone stalking you and he's sneaking up on you, But for that matter, this constant 360-degree awareness. Don't be afraid to, if you feel like you're being followed, don't be afraid to wheel around and look, or suddenly change and cross the street. You want to avoid. You do not. If you get one, by the time you're in a conflict, you already messed up. You've already missed all the signposts. If you're in a restaurant or a public place and some sketchy people come in there, do not be afraid to get up and just leave, even if it's in the middle of a meal. Trust your intuition and your instinct. Usually your basic instincts and feelings. A lot of people just think they're being paranoid. No, not necessarily. You start to get a fixed sense. So it really is all about the avoidance. By the time you're actually in physical confrontation, you messed up big time. You really screwed up. It's all the signposts.
Yeah, those are some great advice. One thing that you're big on these days is qigong, you said, and qi means energy, and the term gong means work. So this translates to energy work. So this gives us opportunity to talk about energy. And I think Bianca has some questions for you about energy.
Okay, well, I listened to the previous podcast you did on with Derek, and at one point you were talking about the connection between emotion and the body. I was wondering how that translates, this awareness that emotion gets stuck in the body, and just for example, you're talking about sometimes like you feel a little something in your shoulder or like a part of your body's bugging you, and then you start paying attention to it. How do you use energy work, and how have you practiced this ability to master the energy within the body so that we actually have a good energy flow?
Well, the pulling down exercise that I talked about at the beginning of the show, very, very good one. I mean, that's been around for a long time, where you're literally pulling energy from the earth down through the body, out the bottoms of the feet. You get this flow going. There's other ones. We don't have enough time to get into specifics, but I would recommend reading a book by Louise Hay. And she wrote a whole bunch of books on body, mind, and the connection between negative emotions and body aches and pains. Basically, negative thoughts create negative situations in the body. And each body part is a symbol of a particular negativity. For example, a neck that bothers you all the time, a stiff neck, pain in the neck, it usually is the result of fear of new ideas, fear of change, reluctance to change, being stuck in one's way, Shoulder, for example, are symbolic of usually being weighted down with your responsibilities, or carrying responsibility that might not even be yours, carrying the weight of the world, all these things influence the body, and each body part is symbolic of what's imbalanced in your life. So it's like your higher mind telling you what you need to do through these aches and pains and so forth. And you can learn exactly what they are, and then you can take steps to protect yourself from these pains. One of those things would be Qigong, which is, pulling energy down through the body. There's various, hip circles and movement patterns that you can do to kind of keep the body loose. But it really comes back to your subconscious mind, your negative emotions. You have negative emotions trapped in your mind, negative, seeing negative scenes in your mind, berating yourself for something you did years ago, or fear of a future event. People are always stuck in like past or future.
Yeah.
The goal is to become present and aware of what's going on now, living in the now. Probably one of the best tutorials on living in the now was written by a fellow by the name of Eckhart Tolle.
Yep.
And he wrote several books on this. It's basically Buddhism, but he distills it in a very clear way that everyone can understand, so that you're not always in the past thinking of berating yourself for past mistakes or ruminating on past failures or whatever. And some people are just always living in the future. They're not living right now. It brings like a present awareness to what is going on right now.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about that, the presence and the now and the metaphysical world through a lot of authors that you've recommended over time. And that's Eckhart Tolle, Louise Hay, Neville Goddard, Florence Scovel-Shinn, Thomas Troward, Esther
They're all
Hicks.
excellent reads. And, we don't have enough time in a podcast to get too deep into it, but people have to understand that they're very much shaped by their thoughts. And the thoughts aren't always your own. They do come from the collective, and the collective is just everybody as a whole. The TV is an example of the collective. You get a lot of stuff implanted into your mind that really doesn't belong there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Bring in awareness to your, you have a constant inner conversation going on. You got to bring an inner awareness to this conversation. What is it that you're telling yourself? A lot of people aren't even aware of it. There's so much in their heads that they don't even realize. They're not even in the present moment. People that
absolutely.
talk.
So, Steve, I want to be respectful of your time. So I just have one last question for you, and then I'd love to close with that pulling down exercise. At the end of our last conversation, we kind of talked about what happens when we die and about the cyclic reincarnation. And we were curious, from your past year since we last talked, do you still want to get out of this cycle of reincarnation?
Absolutely. The earth is the lowest level. We're it's the lowest level of consciousness. Now, there are some very highly spiritual adepts that have agreed to come back to earth to be teachers of us all. We know who a lot of them were. We know of Jesus Christ. We know, Buddha. There's been many great spiritual enlightened teachers that have come back to kind of guide us on our journey here on planet Earth. But for the most part, we should want to break free of this earthly cycle, this earthly body. Soul come into the earth for experience, to experience. And once you get that experience, you want to go to a higher level. This is my belief, some
for
people
sure.
know.
So,
and it doesn't. Go ahead.
since you'll be checking out of this cycle, what message do you want to leave for all those remaining in this reincarnation cycle with your wisdom away? What wisdom do you want to leave with us?
Well, what you see isn't necessarily the real world. Don't be fooled by your vision and your eyes. You know? This flesh body and this, you know, it also seems real, but pretty much everything's just like an illusion. It really, truly is. And, you know, we create our own worlds through our thoughts and our emotions. You know, everything is created. So you have the ability also to create a better world for yourself. If you don't like where you're at, you can, through your thinking and through a higher mind, you can actually make a much better world for yourself here on Earth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Steve. For people wanting to learn more about you, Steve, they could find you at stevemaxwellsc.com or on Instagram, MaxwellSC, Twitter as well. Let's close with that pulling down exercise for a minute or two. We'd be really blessed and treated by that.
All right, here's just stand up. Is it better to do it? And imagine you're under a powerful waterfall, and the water is pouring down over the top of your head and rushing down over your body, right? And then inhale through the lower lobes of the lung, into the ribs, into the upper chest. And then as you exhale, you literally pull energy through the top of your head, through your body, out your fingertips, down your legs, and through your bottoms of your feet. So you're imagine in a powerful waterfall pouring down over your head, or a powerful shower. And you can feel that energy being pulled through your body. And a good breath cycle would be inhale, 2, 3, 4, pause for a moment, and then exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you repeat that cycle. And you can do this for long periods of time. I recommend no less than 10 minutes, but you know, you can do it up to an hour. Now you can do it seated while driving, but it's not as powerful as standing. You can also do it when laying in bed. For many people, it's good to practice first lying in bed. Imagine your feet are braced on a rock and a stream of water is pouring down over your body. And imagine all negativity just being literally pulled out the bottoms of your feet, so that only, you know, goodness and love and healing is coming in through your body, and all negativity, aches, pains, fear, doubt, all being pulled out through the bottom.
Wow.
It's very powerful. Beautiful. And you can do that intermittently all throughout the day.
I will. I'll be doing that. I'll incorporate that into my routine. Well, it's been an honor. Thank you so much, Steve. I wish you a beautiful return to the beautiful Ikaria Island, Island,
maybe
for your training camp. Oh, no doubt about it.
Next year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I see myself and you meeting up at one of your seminars in the near future. It won't be this July 23rd in Ikaria, but sometime soon, no doubt about it. To close every conversation, we bring our fist in solidarity to the winner circle. Boom.
There we go.
Thank you so much, Steve. Wishing you a beautiful day, and may your spirit continue to shine and inspire and empower all those that you touch.
Thanks a lot. I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye now.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.